and today we're going to talk about how to cluster, and this is going to be important for you because going forward, well, as you found out already in all of the assignments, I am requiring you to do a formal outline. The reason for that is to ensure that you engage in all 3 steps of the writing process. And this is just a disclaimer. If you already know how to do formal outlines, this might not necessarily apply to you, but if you need a refresher, certainly listen in. So let's go ahead and get started. The objectives of this video are for you to help to learn how to do a cluster and what you need to do before you actually do the cluster, and then also understand how a cluster is an informal pre-writing activity. And the reason for that is because it's really messy. You'll see what I'm talking about. It's not very easy to turn in. It doesn't look very pretty when you turn it in. That's why I'm asking you to do a formal outline. And then also because you'll be able to learn a step-by-step as to how to do a cluster yourself. So before you cluster, there are some steps that you need to take. Make sure that there needs to be some brainstorming beforehand. And in doing so, you are pondering the topic. You're kind of thinking about it to see how you're going to tackle it, if you will. And of course, given the fact that you will have a question, make sure you answer the prompt. I will continue with the worst teacher exercise just because it makes it easier for you since we're building up on that exercise. My answer or my thesis statement was that Mrs. Sadings was the worst teacher because she was racist. Then, if you're doing a research paper, of course, you have to conduct research to identify as many points of support to your thesis. But since we're not doing research, we're just going to bypass that step. We narrowed your list. We brainstormed to try to identify as many topics as we possibly could. We narrowed that list to the 3 strongest points of support. So let's say that this was my initial list as to why she was racist, or how she showed that she was racist: because she was not caring, unorganized, cranky, underprepared, she disliked students of color, dismissed students of color. And then I realized that these are the weakest points. They would not make a good support to why she was racist. So get rid of those. And we still have 4. The reason why this one is highlighted in bold is because this is going to be my counter argument. I think, well, how would people excuse the fact that she was racist? And they would say that she was just underprepared. Then we have our 3 points of support as to why she was racist, or how she showed she was racist. She disliked students of color, she dismissed students of color, and she stereotyped students of color. So we talked about the fact that you need a counter argument. We already have that here. So notice we developed that from our initial brainstorming list. So when you develop your brainstorm list, it's possible that you will not, obviously you're not going to use all the content, but think about some of those points that you disregard. One of those might come in handy for your counter argument. And of course, try to pick your strongest counter argument because you'll be able to refute that better and it'll strengthen your overall argument. And then identify your 3 points. So how do you actually cluster? I recommend that you use a whole blank sheet of paper and you write on it vertically, not horizontally. This is one of those lessons where I wish we were in class because I do this on the board. It's very visual and it's a little difficult to do it here, but you'll see why I want you to do this in a vertical versus horizontal format, just because you need more space. Okay, so in your paper, you draw in the center, you draw a circle, and you keep your thesis in mind, and you write a word that reflects your thesis. In this case, we're talking about the fact that she was racist. So in your paper, in the very center, you write a circle, or an oval, and you write the word that reflects your thesis statement. In this case, we're talking about the fact that my teacher was racist. And then you draw 4 lines away from it, like you're drawing a sun, just like I've done here. And at the end of those lines, you write a circle. Okay? And each one of those circles, you fill it in with your reasons of support to the thesis. So we talk about the fact that she liked students of color, she was dismissive of students of color, she stereotyped students of color, and of course, we can't forget about our counter argument. So we said the fact that those who disagree would say that she was unprepared, so we need to include that on there. And notice that I wrote little minus sign here. that lets me know that that's my counter argument, that it doesn't necessarily support my thesis. All right, so let me go back to my PowerPoint. It looks like this a program that I'm using to record the video, it doesn't let me access the video directly from the PowerPoint, so I have to go back and forth. So sorry about that. All right, so then at the end of each circle, you have to write, talk about the fact that you wrote your subpoints at the very end. And then at the very end of those subpoints, you draw 2 lines away from it. So let me show you that. So here we are. Then we have the lines from our major points of support, 3 lines for each one. Okay. At the end of those 3, we draw a circle. Okay. And you fill in the reasons to show that support this particular main reason. In other words, how does she show that she dislikes students of color? It was through the looks, through the fact that she was rude, the discipline that she gave students of color, how was she dismissive? So give me 3 different ways that represent this part. Likewise, in terms of how does she stereotype students, give me 3 different reasons, if you will, or ways. And then finally, our counter-argument, those who disagree with us, how could we tell them, well, you know what, you're wrong, because there are classes that she could have taken, there are workshops she could have taken, and she could have done some professional development. So in addition to drawing these 3 circles, we need to draw 2 lines out of them, okay, for each one. If you notice, each one has 2 lines. And then at the end of that, we're going to draw another small circle. The last circles that we needed to fill in. And for each one of these circles, those are the examples that support each one of these points. So for example, how or when did she give dirty looks on campus, in class? How was she rude? She was abrupt with students. She was also snappy. In terms of how did she stereotype students, she was surprised at the fact that Latino students didn't have an accent, and she assumed that everybody was Mexican. So these smaller circles, those are the examples that support these major points. I'm sorry, not the major points, the subpoints. These are your major points. These are your subpoints. So finally, the final checklist for your cluster is the following. Do you have a cluster at the center? And you should have one. Does it have at least 4 spokes or lines out of it? And do those lines have smaller circles at the end of those? Those would be your major points of support. Then we transition on to, do these small circles have 3 additional lines at the end of them? And these lines also need to have 3 smaller circles at the very end. Those are your subpoints. And then finally, do these 3 lines, these 3 circles have 2 lines at the end of each? And do those lines have at least 2 circles at the very end? And these final circles are your examples in your cluster. In the module, you will see that I have posted in a file with an actual cluster, so you see what it actually looks like, and it's a little bit clearer than, well, it's a little bit clearer than the picture that I showed you. But now you see why I don't like to do clusters as to collect them, because you saw mine, it's pretty messy. Even though you can do it on a computer, it takes a long time, and I think it's just easier if you just do it freehand. But that is it for this video. So in the next video, we will talk about how to turn the cluster into the outline, which is what I will actually collect from you, and that's what you get credit for.